Today, we would like to talk about the overview of applied linguistics. What is it? Okay, when we talk about applied linguistics, there are some issues that you can discuss here. So first of all, there are another words probably you learned linguistics before, or when you took your undergraduate program, you are graduated from language education study program, and here you will learn already also called by um, linguistics, but that's linguistics as the basis, usually that introduction to linguistics, and you are familiar with several terms, for example like phonology, phonetics, morphology, right? What else? Syntax, um, discourse, and there are many others. But this time we are going to discuss what's so called by applied linguistics. From these keywords, I'm sure that you are familiar some of them, but we would like to see further. The objective of this class is actually that you are expected to be able to identify what's so called by applied linguistics, and then you are able to restate it with your own words. Also, you are required or you are expected to be able to compare as well as to contrast the notion of applied linguistics and linguistics applied. Interesting, right? And then later on, you are required to or you are expected to explain several topics of applied linguistics and also indicate some possible impacts of applied linguistics in or on several fields. This is the keywords that you probably need to know. I'm sure that some of you probably familiar, but let's have a look. Interdisciplinary, research, theory and practice, problem solving and decision or decision making, real people, language-based problems, practical problems or uses, and in the real world. Okay? When we talked about applied linguistics, in fact, Charter and Noonan come up with some ideas to identify or to categorize that into subdisciplines. And here are some, what do you call that, subdisciplines that identified by Charter and Noonan in 2001, such as literacy, speech pathology, deaf education, interpreting and translating, communication practice, lexicography, first language acquisition, second language acquisition. And if you pay attention on this, in compared to the basics, in compared to the introductions that I just told you, such as, for example, like phonetics, phonology, this is totally different, right? Literacy, speech pathology. And then from this difference, actually, you can identify what is it? What is applied linguistics? How is it different with the basic linguistics or the core? Sometimes people say that the pure linguistic uh, aspects or, for example, disciplines that we know so far. Some questions are being identified or being introduced around applied linguistics. For example, like what kinds of skills do children attain beyond basic literacy? Should children speaking a dialect to be encouraged to maintain it? Yeah, dialects, say for example like Javanese, Sundanese, Bataknese, Balinese. Yeah, there are many words. So that's what we call dialect. Or in communities with more than one language, which one should be used in schools? So this kinds of question is really interesting to discuss. Should deaf children, I remember we I used to have students, deaf students, but they don't want to be categorized as hearing impaired. They prefer to be called deaf because the fact that they are deaf from child, so then they prefer to be called deaf student. So should deaf children, in this case, learn a sign language or a combination of lip reading and speaking? Next time I will share that to you. I got a very good experience of helping two of my previous students with this then. And should everyone learn foreign languages? If so, which one? Which foreign language? And should every child study literature? What is literature? It's really interesting. Later on, also, there are some potential questions of language in related to the society. For example, then we would like to identify language change. Language is indeed changing from time to time in line with the changings of culture, right? And languages or some languages are dying out, not popular. Some people don't even speak the language anymore. Now, should that be prevented? If yes, how can we do? What can we do? Should the growth of English as the international lingua franca be welcomed or deplored? Is it better for people to learn each other's language and use translations? And is languages being used for political appreciations or indoctrination? And which languages should be used in law corps? This is also interesting, and or official documents. So these kinds of questions are very crucial when we talked about applied linguistics, because again, then the scopes of applied linguistics is wide and it's really what you call that beyond the basic information or the basic knowledge that we're supposed to know about linguistics itself. Say, for example, in the educations, we can talk about first language acquisition, second language, foreign language acquisitions, clinical linguistics, or language testing. And then in the area of language work and law, workplace communication, language planning, linguistic forensic. And in the area of language information and effect, we can also talk about literary stylistic, critical discourse analysis. This is interesting. Translation and interpretation, information designs, and lexicography. Okay. Now we would like to have a look a little bit the difference between general linguistics and applied linguistics. Here, from this uh, chart, we can see this is what we call like the area of or the basic knowledge of linguistics. Yeah. So which is consists of phonetics, phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, pragmatics. Phonetics is about speech sounds, phonology, phonemes, and how the sounds is being produced. Morphology, it's about word context. Yeah. Syntax about the structure of sentence, the structure of what you call it, like a phrase. And then semantics about meaning. Yeah. And then the last one, pragmatics, is about meaning, but not only literal meaning, but meaning in context. We can also see from here, I can like comparisons between linguistic applied and applied linguistic. Yeah, so for example, if linguistic applied, we would like to look inward, inside, not focusing to solve the problems. Now, this is the key for applied. Yeah, so applied in this case is look outward. They look at what is the issue, what is the problem. Yeah, and then they would like to solve the problem itself. And then language acquisitions, linguistic applied in this case uses language data to develop linguistics, especially linguistic knowledge about language. We talk always only about language, while applied linguistic, we studies language problem, but we would like to talk about some other issues around that. Yeah. And these are some samples of topic, for example, like language attritions, language descriptions for linguistic applied. While applied linguistic, the samples is, for example, second language learning. What happens with that? Or computer assisted language learning. So not directly to the language, but how could computer incorporated technology incorporated in order to improve someone's learning experience? Okay, now we can identify, in fact, the definitions of applied linguistics. Yes, you can see here that applied linguistics is identified using what we know about language, how it is learned, how it is used in order to achieve some purpose or solve problems. This is the key. Yeah. So achieve some purpose or solve problem in the real world. This is according to Smith and Salsa-Murcia, quite new, yeah, 2014. While applied linguistics is concerned also with the increasing understanding of the role of language in human affairs. Yeah. So again, then because we learned just now that language is changing in line with the culture, and then also there are some improvement or there are some changes in terms of understanding of what you call that language. New languages probably being appeared at the moment or new words. Yeah, so that's gonna be very interesting to have a look. Yeah, so for example, I don't know, are you familiar with NFT? It's quite new, yeah. During the pandemic, also lots of new words being introduced. Yeah, so yeah. Okay, so again, then this is the definitions of applied linguistics. Now, what is interesting with the word applied itself? Applied is more what you call it again, more to something practical, something which is hands-on. Yeah, so practical application of a single branch of academic knowledge. Yeah, so for example, that's the applied itself. And applied linguistics is related to applied subject that have no pure. So we do not talk about theory anymore. We do not talk about merely, for example, like about phonetics, how the sounds is being produced. No, yeah. So which is going to be more to that. So that's the things. And applied linguistic research work in critical applied linguistics who employ theoretical concepts. So we use the theoretical concepts and frameworks from postmodernist critical theory. Now, this is something that we would like to have a look further about postmodernism. Yeah. Now, we would like to talk about topics in applied linguistics. What are some common topics of that? Here, there are some areas, for example, analysis of discourse and interaction, assessment and evaluations, because that's related to the language testing, for example, bilingual, immersion, heritage and language minority education, language and ideology, language and learner characteristics, yes, language and technology, language and cognition, brain research, and so on, until you consider text analysis and translation and also interpretation. That's all well, I mean, it's a wide range area of applied linguistics. Now, other than areas, there are some topics, for example. Now, this is going to be important later on if you want to, for example, like come up with an idea. How will you try to write down your thesis, master thesis later on? Then you can think about some topics applied in available in applied linguistics. For example, like language teaching methodology, yeah, the definitions again, as you can see here, it concerns with the second language teaching and also foreign language teaching, and discusses issues in language teaching methodology. So that's why we call it LTM. And this topic is followed by two common methods. We learn what's called by action research and experimental research. Yeah. You will learn that further later on in self-study, studi mandiri, and research. Next, about, for example, about syllabus and material designs. Again, then which material designs is presented for language learner. Like at the moment, I'm also teaching English for specific purposes, and that's very important actually to know what types of syllabus, what types of material that we can prepare for a group of people. I mean, that working groups of people, not just students in school. Yeah, and also language testing. Further is about language for this is exactly what I just mentioned. Yeah, language for specific purposes refer to teaching and research of language in relation to specific communication. So communication needs for learners and in academics and professional contexts. So we know actually in what you call that language for specific purposes, what's called by English for academic purposes and English for occupational purposes. Okay, the next is actually second language acquisition and bilingual acquisition, language policy and planning. Yeah, so if you are interested with that, for example, this is the something forensic linguistic that you can also learn here, and the last one social linguistic and critical discourse analysis. Okay, the other one, oh, this is still, yeah, I mean, that's some kinds of like translation studies and lexicography, which is related to translation. Once again, it's not just about what you call it, how to translate, but again, that you need to also learn with some basic theory or something that you need to know in order to provide uh, not only appropriate but also good translation or also interpreting. Lexicography is actually the study and practice in compiling dictionaries, and dictionaries need to be reviewed from time to time. Overall, this is the connections between impact of language teaching, impact of discourse analysis, and impact of forensic linguistic here, if you can see. I mean, there are some issues that probably you can identify, for example, the difference in language teaching approaches, and also distinct structure between spoken language and written language. Yeah, again, this is what I do a lot. I mean, I experience a lot when helping my students for academic writing. Yeah, many of them write down spoken language, not written language. Okay, and also the use of linguistics tools to identify, for example, authorship, blackmail notes, suicide, and this is mostly related to forensic linguistics. Yeah. So again, when we talked about applied linguistics, once again, we can see the applications. Yeah, so we use the language in order to uh, learn in depth, learn further on how can we solve some issues or problems around that. I would like to provide this video for you to have a look, and then you can see or you can watch that to know further why do people need to study applied linguistics. Okay, and this is some reflective questions, for example, something which is related to that. Can you state your own definitions of applied linguistics? How can you identify that? How is the general linguistics different from applied linguistics? Yeah, so I just mentioned that many times: general linguistics, the basic theory, and applied linguistics. And the last one, can you identify a topic that belong to applied linguistics and a topic that belong to linguistic applied? That's all. I hope that this short video provide you like a general overview about applied linguistics. What is it about? Okay, so there will be some questions, there will be some discussion that we have. Please get involved, and I will really appreciate your positive and active involvement. I will comment that and also provide you credit for what you have done. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again next week. Bye bye.